Welcome to day 54 of our BU 365 day challenge. Do one thing every day that improves us. Today, with our focus and in alignment with our focus on emotions and emotional well-being, this segment of the challenge, we're going to talk about emotional decision making. How do emotions play into our decision making? Now, emotional decision making comes naturally for all of us as human beings. We like to pass it off and pretend that we're these subjective, rational thinking beings, but the truth is we're emotional beings first. And so our emotions come from what we experience and what we feel in our bodies, and that's our interpretation of what those feelings in our bodies are, and that becomes emotions. That's how emotions are created. Now, emotions are triggered by thoughts, memories, previous experiences, beliefs. Other times we felt a certain way, or if we've been in a similar situation before, or based on future projections of what we think might happen. Those are all things that can trigger our emotions. Now, there's been research done, a lot of research, and it's revealed that emotions can be potent, pervasive, predictable, sometimes harmful, sometimes beneficial impactors on the decision-making process. So let's talk about 6 different ways to incorporate and control our emotions when it comes to making decisions so that we can make better decisions going forward. First and foremost, we want to understand the science of decision-making. And I'm not going to go into that today because we could spend a couple of hours talking about that. But decision-making is a process, just like anything else, right? And I like to use, I forgot to turn off my alarm. I like to use the SOAP framework these days, especially with changes and challenges. Emotions are the drivers of our actions, right? If we didn't feel any emotions, if we're just going through our day, la-di-da-di-da, and we're not feeling positive or negative or anything, we just do what we're doing. We don't change up or do anything different. Emotions, both positive and negative, strong emotions, cause us to act, take action, do something different. So we want to understand how we personally process and make decisions. How do you make decisions? How you make decisions, although it's a process, your process is probably slightly different than my process for making decisions. I use different decision-making processes depending on the importance, the urgency, the situation. I'm definitely a situational decision maker. So if it's something urgent and important, I will put more time and energy into making that decision and more emotion probably into that decision than if it is something that it's just a whim, or if it's a preference, then it doesn't have future consequences. So we want to understand our own decision-making process. We want to take a breath, pause, and consider the situation. We want to assess the situation, determine, is it urgent? Is it important? Is it necessary? Is it something that I'm just having a triggered response from the past because somebody said something to me that when I was in high school, somebody said to me all the time, and it just reminded me of that and put me back in high school. And now I am, in my 6th decade of life, and I really don't need to respond the same way that I did when I was a teenager. So we want to pause and assess the situation, right? We want to look at the story. What is going on? What is our current situation? What do we want our desired situation to be? We don't always have to rely on our gut. Now, I am a person that says, listen to your gut. Do what your gut says when faced with facts and figures and information, mind-related things, and then instinctual gut feeling things. I always say, in my personal experience, I have learned that if I don't listen to my intuition, if I don't listen to my gut, I'm going to make a mistake. If everything looks awesome on paper, and a lot of people look awesome on paper. I just saw it. My son-in-law was watching a documentary on Dr. Death, I think they call him. And he was a doctor in Texas who actually was awesome on paper, and all of the surgery centers and things wanted him, yet he harmed and killed dozens of people because he wasn't competent. He looked good on paper, but he actually couldn't do the things that the paper said he could do. Even though he'd been trained and passed all the classes and done the things he was supposed to do, he was totally incompetent. So things can look good on paper, yet fall through the cracks and be devastating. He killed 2 people and harmed dozens of others. So we need to keep in mind that we can't always ignore our gut, but we also can't always just rely on our gut to get us through everything. We can't rely on just our emotions to get us through every situation. That's why we assess the situation before we make a decision. Fourth, we want to write it down, put it in writing. Write down what decision you're making. Like I said, the simplest decision-making tool that I use, and my dad taught it to my sisters and I when we were little girls, is the plus and minus. You take your piece of paper, a great piece of paper, my doctor invoice, there we go. We fold it in half. We write the decision we need to make on the top, a plus and a minus. I actually think I have a nice graphic of that, but I'm not going to grab it. And we just list out all the reasons to do something, all the reasons not to do something. Some of those reasons will be emotional. Some of those reasons will be rational, facts, figures, subjective and objective. I always mix up subjective and objective. I don't know why. We think we're these objective decision makers, but we're really very subjective because it's all based on our beliefs, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our past experiences, what we think other people will think, things like that. So we want to put it in writing, write it down, even if it's on a simple napkin, plus or minus, do that, and then throw the napkin away or flush it down the toilet, whatever you want to do, because other people don't need to see it, but it helps us to really understand why and how we're making decisions. And if our emotions play a big part in that, it doesn't matter. We want to do what feels right for us at every decision, right? If it doesn't make us feel better or right, it's probably not the right decision for us. Fifth, we want to narrow our options. I'm a big believer in brainstorm a ton of possible options. That's the O in our SOAP framework, options. I believe that we should come up with as many as we possibly can so we don't narrow our focus too early in the decision-making process. And then in the action and analysis, the A of the SOAP framework, we look at the different options and we narrow our options down. We pick 3 and we really only analyze 3 or so of them, or maybe a handful. We don't analyze 100 different options and try to do decision-making and selection tools on them. We can. If you got a computer, you could do it for sure. But is it necessary for most decisions? No. It might be necessary and very valuable for some decisions, but for every decision, of course not. 6 is ask questions. Ask for advice. Go to other people that have made a similar choice or decision before and find out what they did and why they did it. They will tell you both they'll start with the rational reasons that they did something. And if you ask a few questions, they'll get to the emotions. So you can hear the types of emotions that other people use and involve in their decision-making process. And finally, don't overthink this. Don't get burnt out about decision-making. Realize that we are all emotional beings. We're going to have our emotions involved in our decision-making, whether we believe it or not, whether we want to or not. Our emotions take and play a part in our decision-making. And it's just the way we are. It's the way human beings are. We are not just single-dimensional beings. We're not robots that use logic and reason and formulas and algorithms to make our decisions and our choices. We use all of us if we want the best decisions for us. So our action item today is just to, as you go about your day, notice and observe and pay attention to how you make decisions, when you make decisions, what emotions come up most for you during the day while you're making those decisions, and then just share in the comments below the emotion that comes up most for you. It might surprise you. I'm going to do this today too, because I don't know that I've ever done this. Observe my emotion, my decision making for an entire day, and pay attention to the emotions that come up around that. I think that it'll be an interesting exercise, and I might be surprised. I like to think and believe on an objective level that my emotions don't play a huge part in my decision making, yet I also know on a conscious and subconscious level they absolutely positively do. So I will share the emotion that comes up the most for me today with decision making, and I invite you to do the same. That's it. Have an awesome day. Any questions, hit me up. Otherwise, I'll be with you tomorrow for another thing that we can do every day to improve us this year. Have a great day.